And we'll be starting with Darka Hirna, who is already making her way to the stage. She runs a very popular channel, Faces of Independence in Ukraine. Hello.
Hi.
Here is the remote. If you have seen me fighting with it, all I can say is good luck. I think if you point it somewhere there, it works at the red dot. Just say something. Maybe you have to press something. Okay, this one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay.
So tell us about your channel in one sentence.
It's not really popular yet, as you presented it, but I
that
hope.
Says in your bio.
I hope that I'm on this way, you know. My name is Darka Hirna. Actually, I'm a journalist and documentarist. I'm a Kyiv-based journalist and former TV host of Ukrainian public broadcasting company. And today I want to show you my little presentation about my YouTube channel and how I actually switched the TV career to YouTube and why. But first, I don't know. I'm not sure that it's already on it.
Hold on. Let's see.
Okay, and a few sentences before I will start. Now in Ukraine, the most popular platform to get the news is actually YouTube and Telegram. So TV is not popular anymore, as it before full-scale invasion. Why? Because actually after the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, the most popular TV channels united in one TV channel and started the TV marathon. And it's actually the common one TV program about current news and war events. And people just go to social networks and get the information there. But I just want to focus a bit on my topic because I have my focus is national memory policy, history, and Ukrainian liberation movement in the 20th century. Actually, about how Ukraine struggled to get the independence in the past centuries. And I will start from the 2014. Because we have the popular thoughts and discussions in Ukraine that our independence actually started not in 1991, but in 2013 when the Revolution of Dignity started. Because it was the first year when we started to reevaluate our history, our Soviet past. We try to reflect on what's happened with us in the last 100 at least years as a society, what we came through. And beside the revolution, we started, like Ukrainians started this decommunization process in Ukraine. So that means we started to demolish all the communist monuments and toponyms from our public space. Okay, and I don't know what is a former Yugoslavian country experience, but actually Ukraine as a part of USSR were struggled a lot, and here's some numbers of how many people we lost during this 70 years in USSR. I will not make a pause here. I will move on. And actually, how it looked by 2019, Ukrainians actually demolished 2,500 monuments of Lenin and other Soviet leaders. That's interesting because you can see the west part of Ukraine is empty, almost empty, because it was done before 2013. It's a long story, but still you can see the scale of this process. And also 52,000 streets and areas were renamed by 2019. But still, it was a process on a civil society level. So not ordinary people usually took care about all of those topics of decommunization and history. But one of the most important things what happened during the revolution, that KGB USSR archives was declassified. So that means that journalists got the access to the millions of documents of USSR, and that means that we could start to research it actually into and to spread and debunk some Russian historical propaganda. But as I mentioned, it wasn't really popular. It wasn't popular on a society or wide level. It's paradoxic, but 1/3 of Ukrainians by 2020 felt nostalgia about USSR, and it was obviously it was warmed up by Russia and pro-Russian TV channels. And this guy, who is actually the close friend of Putin, I just want to mention that all of those media not exist anymore. And this guy was exchanged on our prisoners of war a few months ago. And the situation changed a lot. But in 2019, President Zelensky, who was a candidate into the president, he actually came with a narrative that there is no difference what views on history you have, because he wanted to unite Ukrainians from different groups and bubbles. And as long as 1/3 of Ukrainians felt nostalgia about Russia and USSR, he appealed also to those people. And that's how he wanted actually to unite the whole country. And it worked. He won the election. And he was one of the main narratives, not only. And here is my personal story, because I wanted to put some context that you understand what was going on in Ukraine all of those years, last years. And back to this time, to the president elections in 2019, I met Mykola Matusevich. He was unknown at this time, but he was a human rights activist in Soviet Union. And he was one of only 10 Ukrainians who founded the first human rights group to fight for human rights and against Ukrainian discrimination. And he spent actually 12 years in USSR labor camps, and nobody knew about him. So this dissident movement, as we call it, like the movement of people like him, it was really underestimated topic in Ukrainian media. People usually don't know who are they and that we actually had this story. And I realized that his living conditions actually really poor. So this guy actually did fight for independence of Ukraine, but he's unknown and he's poor. And this time, I actually worked as a TV host for Ukrainian public broadcast company. And it was basically, I was dependent on the rates, you know, and I had to cover the topics that actually society are interested in. And as you can see, the most popular TV topics a few years ago, it was like pensions, grocery, food prices, medication, and horoscopes. And the topics I was interested mostly, like reforms, human rights, and Ukrainian history, was the least popular TV topics. So I just decided to quit and focus on this national memory policy topic. Okay. Yeah, saying goodbye to TV. And that's how my YouTube started. Actually, we have now a very big boom of YouTube channels in Ukraine, and in particular, historical YouTube channels. There is a huge interest in history now, because lots of Ukrainians, after full-scale invasion, just lost the cultural floor. Because they were really, really disappointed of how what Russia did. They didn't expect it. And I just decided to research how many dissidents, how many political prisoners, former political prisoners of USSR actually is still alive. And what is the living condition actually they have? How they live in their communities? Yeah. So I visited 18 cities and villages all around Ukraine and collected 41 stories about these people. And this is how I actually launched my YouTube. And as you can see, back to this time, that's how they usually lived. So it's pretty difficult to watch. So yeah, and now on my YouTube, there's a playlist, Ukrainian Dissidents. You can just get to know a bit closer if you're interested in. Yeah, that's how it looks like. I'm sorry I don't show the video because it's really hard from technical reasons. Okay, and by December 2021, there was only 3,000 subscribers. It wasn't a lot, but then full-scale invasion started, and the decolonization protest started. So we actually ended up with just decommunization and started to demolish all the Russian monuments and toponyms. And Zelensky actually really changed his narrative. The main narrative now is there are difference. Sorry for the mistake. And the parliament, recently parliament conducted the decolonization law. That means that the Russian imperial policy considered as a criminal. And Russian propaganda and symbols are banned. And as you can see, there's a few pictures of Pushkin's monument who were demolished. Yeah, that's what's happening now in the small and big communities in Ukraine, all around Ukraine, but mostly in the eastern regions. And it's interesting that people from the mostly Russian-speaking cities, they try to get rid of it as well. And that's why I started the blog about how we lived in USSR and how the USSR system showed the Ukrainians. So I actually raised the topics as how USSR cinematography made love at Ukraine culture, because it was very popular. Because in Soviet culture, nationalities were represented as funny, stupid, and so on. and Russian was something very, honored and privileged, obviously. Also, I started the topic that touches each family, each person in Ukraine, because it turned out that lots of people has lots of Russian books. And actually, I tried to research why our home library is full of Russian literature. When this turning point actually started in USSR, it was in 1960s, when the Brezhnev tried to make this Soviet human, Soviet nationality. And also, one of the main topic I raise, it's Russification of Ukraine, because as you can see on the picture, this popular meme in Ukraine, that's how Russian culture and language felt during the last 30 years, at least, when we already became an independent. As a person who actually was born in west of Ukraine, there was always, for me, a lack of Ukrainian press, Ukrainian literature, and for the last 8 years, it started to change. And this is a really important processes that should be covered, as I believe. And also, due to the war, our army was decommunized as well for the last 8 years. So all the symbols on military units was changed, and it has actually really deep historical roots. So it was interesting to research what each of them means and how far in the Ukrainian history it goes. And it's also one of the very good way to learn about Ukrainian history as well, on a battlefield. Okay. How my YouTube channel success is now? It's not really big. It's only 45,000 subscribers. There's a lots of different historical YouTube channels in Ukraine, huge ones like History Without Myth. It's like the most popular YouTube in Ukraine now. But we have this segment of historical YouTube channels, and they are usually really popular. So on my way to spread to collect more subscribers. I have now weekly vlogs, interviews with military combats also. And in these interviews, I try to focus on historical question, on revelation of history and so on, because now lots of people, also in military, they also discover lots of new things about Ukrainian past. And why I focus on this topic, history and national memory policy, because as I mentioned, public request for revision of history in Ukraine is very high now. We have infinite number of unexplored archives. And actually, we have a lot more to do with the history, decommunization and decolonization. And why YouTube? Because obviously there's a lot of freedom. I get feedback from my audience immediately, and that helps me to get better in my coverage. I think this is the best time for Ukrainian YouTube now because it's rising up, and that's a good moment to start. So yes, that's my experience. Thank you for listening. I hope it was interesting.